This morning the two columns look like this. On the left, one civil judgment, stamped and sealed by the Udon Thani Provincial Court, in my favor, for 2,410,000 baht, plus interest at 5% from the date of the transfer. One criminal complaint, for use of a forged document, still with the prosecutor, 22 months old. 11 exhibits, all admitted. One witness who did not run. On the right, 940,000 baht paid to my lawyer, across 2 years and 4 months, the last installment funded by selling a motorcycle I did not want to sell. 2 years and 7 months of my life, which at 66 is not a rounding error. 14 kilos, gone and not in a good way. One daughter who did not speak to me for the middle 9 months of it, and one friend who did, every Friday, without once asking me how it was going, which is the kindest thing anyone did for me in that entire period. The left column is the part people want to hear about. The right column is the part I am actually going to tell you, because when I started this I wanted something fast and loud and satisfying, and the man I hired talked me out of it in 90 minutes, and what he gave me instead was so much worse than what I wanted that I have spent the years since trying to work out whether I would do it again. His office was above a gold shop on the road that runs out towards the ring road, and you reached it by a concrete stair at the side of the building that smelled of the drain beneath it. There was no sign in English. There was a laminated notice on the door in Thai, and under it, printed on a sheet of A4 that had gone yellow at the edges, the words civil, criminal, land, contract, which I later learned had been there since 2009. Anuwat Ruangrit was 59 years old, wore a short-sleeved shirt with a pen in the pocket, and had a desk with 3 separate stacks on it, each stack squared off at the corners. He did not offer me tea. He asked me how much time I had that day, and when I said all of it, he said good, because he intended to use 90 minutes of it, and I would not enjoy the last 30. I had come to him with a plan. I want to be honest about the plan, because if I dress it up now, it will not be worth your time. The plan was that I would find out where she was living, and I would stand in the road outside the house I had paid for and say what she had done, loudly, in front of her mother and her brother and the neighbors who used to bring me mangoes. And then I would put all of it on the internet with her full name and her identity card number and the photographs of the transfer slips, and I would make sure that no man anywhere ever gave that woman a single baht again. That was the plan. It had taken me 4 months to build in my head. 4 months of lying awake at 3 in the morning constructing sentences, and by the time I climbed those concrete stairs I could deliver it without breathing. I told him the plan in about 6 minutes. He listened with his hands flat on the desk. Then he said, "I am going to tell you 3 things now, and you will not believe any of them until about month 8. And he held up one finger at a time while he said them. And I remember thinking that this was a man who had held up those same 3 fingers a great many times. The first thing was this: the land is not yours. It was never yours. It cannot be made yours by a court, by an argument, or by the truth. Under the land code, a foreigner may not hold land in Thailand, and if you funded the purchase of land in the name of a Thai national, with the understanding that it was really yours, then the arrangement itself is void, and you are not the wronged party in that transaction. You are a participant in it. If you take that part of this into a courtroom, you will be handing the other side a weapon and the state a question, and both of them will use it. So the house is gone. It has been gone since the day it was bought. Grieve it on your own time, and do not bring it here." The second thing was that the money was different. The money had moved out of an account in my name at a Thai bank on a specific Tuesday, in 4 transfers over 6 days, on the authority of a power of attorney I had signed 9 months earlier when I was going into Bangkok Hospital Udon for a gallbladder that had gone bad on a Sunday, and which had been drafted narrowly, for medical and administrative purposes, and which, Anuwat had the copy in front of him within 90 seconds of me producing it, because I had brought everything. I had brought a document wallet the size of a small suitcase, did not on its face authorize the transfer of funds to a third party. That, he said, is a case. Not a good case. A case. 3.2 million baht went out. Some of it went to purposes you might have consented to. The part that went to her brother's account and to the vehicle purchase is the part we can stand on. And there is a second document, the loan acknowledgement, with your signature on it, which you say you have never seen. That signature is either yours or it is not, and there is a laboratory that answers that question, and the answer takes 4 to 7 months and costs money, and may come back the wrong way. Here is the whole of the wrong, and then I am not going to tell it again, because it is not the story. I met Kanyarat Thongsuk in 2013 in a shopfront pharmacy in Nong Bua, where I had gone in for something for my knee, and we were together for 8 years, and in that time I paid for a plot of land and a 2-bedroom house outside her mother's village, and a pickup, and her nephew's schooling, and a shop that lasted 11 months, and all of that I gave, freely, with my eyes open, and none of it is what this is about. In September 2021, while I was recovering from surgery and taking a great many things on trust, 3.2 million baht left my account at a bank on Prajak Road, under a power of attorney intended for hospital paperwork, and a loan acknowledgement appeared in the file at that bank, bearing a signature that I am prepared to swear on anything you like was not put there by my hand. In March 2022, she stopped answering. In April, her mother told me on the phone that Kanyarat had gone to work in Rayong, and that I should stop calling. That is the wrong. That is the whole of it. And everything else that follows is what I did about it. The third thing Anawat said was the one I did not understand for a long time. He said, winning and collecting are 2 different jobs, and the second one is longer than the first one. Most foreigners come here wanting the first job and think that is the end of the film. He said the word film in English, in the middle of a Thai sentence, and I remember it because it was the only time in 28 months I saw him make a joke. Then he told me his fee structure, which was the thing I liked about him most, in the end. Not a percentage. He did not do percentages, he said, because a percentage makes a lawyer optimistic, and I did not need an optimistic lawyer. A retainer, then a schedule, so much for the complaint, so much per hearing day, so much for the expert application, disbursements billed at cost with the receipts attached. He estimated the whole at between 700,000 and 1,100,000 baht, and said the range was wide because he could not tell me yet how many times the other side would move the date. I asked him why he was taking it. He said he had run a good many of these and the foreigners were usually terrible clients. They wanted the case to be about how they felt, but that I had brought a document wallet in order, with the bank slips already photocopied twice, and that this was the first time in 3 years anybody had walked up those stairs with the evidence sorted before the lawyer asked for it. He said, "You are angry, which is normal, but you are angry and organized, which is rare, and organized is the half I can use. So I did not go to the village. I want to be very clear that I nearly did, twice, in the fortnight after that meeting, and that the second time I got as far as the turning off the 2410 with the engine running before I put the truck in reverse. What stopped me the second time was not virtue. It was that Anawat had, on my way out of that first meeting, said one more sentence, almost as an afterthought, with his hand already on the next file. If you post her name, or if you go to that house and make a scene, she will file a criminal complaint for defamation. And in this country defamation is criminal, and you will spend your money defending yourself instead of pursuing her, and I will not act for you in both matters. I did not believe him about the criminal part. I went home and looked it up and sat in a plastic chair on my balcony for an hour, reading sections 326 and 328 of the Criminal Code, and then I put my phone face down on the table. The complaint was filed on the 11th of a Monday in the Civil Division of the Udon Thani Provincial Court, and I went with him, which he told me was unnecessary and did not object to. The building is set back behind a car park with a security post at the entrance, and at 8:30 in the morning, the queue for the filing counters runs from the counters, across the tiled floor, and out to the covered area where the smokers stand. Everybody in that queue has a folder. That is the thing that struck me first. Every single person, Thai and otherwise, old and young, a woman in a work uniform, 2 men in their 60s in farm clothes, a young couple who looked like they had not slept, all of them holding a folder against their chest, the way you hold something that has taken you a long time to assemble. There is a machine that gives you a numbered slip. I still have the slip from that morning. I could not tell you why I kept it, and I am not going to invent a reason. It is in a drawer, folded once, with the number 0043 on it. The court fee for a claim of that size was calculated at 2% of the amount claimed, capped, and came to a number that made me put my hand on the counter. Anawat had told me the figure in advance, and I had transferred the money in advance, and I had still not understood it until the clerk wrote it on the receipt. A woman called Duangjai took the papers, checked the copies against the originals with a ruler, found that one bank statement had been copied at an angle, so the account number was cut on the right margin, and handed it back. Not unkindly, just handed it back. We went out to the shop across the car park and paid 5 baht a page and came back and rejoined the queue where we had left it. And the second time she stamped it. Received. That was the whole of the first day. 6 hours, one number on a slip, one stamp, and the strangest lightness in my chest that I have ever felt. Because for 4 months the thing had lived only in my head, and now it existed in a building with a car park. Then nothing happened for a very long time, and this is the part that nobody tells you about, and it is the actual substance of what I am describing to you. The summons had to be served. Service is done by an officer of the court, at the address of record, and the address of record for Kanyarat Thongsuk was her mother's house in the village outside Nong Han, and on the 8th of the following month, the officer went there and was told she did not live there and had not for some time. He recorded that. He went again 18 days later. Same answer. The file came back to Anawat with a notation, and Anawat rang me and said, "This will now take an extra 2 to 3 months. We will apply for service by publication, and I need 11,000 baht for the newspaper." And I said, with a great deal of heat, that she was plainly somewhere, and that surely somebody could simply find her. And he waited until I had finished and then said, "The court is not an investigation service. The court is a set of doors that open in order. This is one of the doors. It opens slowly." I understood that sentence intellectually on the day, and emotionally about a year later. That was the first real setback, and it landed early, and I would like to describe honestly what it did to me, because I had been braced for a fight, and what I got instead was a wall of gray. There was nobody to argue with. There was no villain in that moment. Only a court officer who had gone twice to a house in the heat and written down what he was told. I drove home, and I did not sleep, and at 4 in the morning, I opened a document on my laptop and typed her name and the first line of the post, and looked at it for a long time, and then I got up and swam. The swimming is worth mentioning because it is one of only 2 things I did right in that period that had nothing to do with the case. There was a hotel a kilometer from my apartment that sold a monthly pool membership for 500 baht, and I had let mine lapse in the bad spring, and in the second month of the case I bought it again. 20 lengths, badly, at 7 in the morning, most days. I mention it because in the audit at the end of all this, the swimming is on the other side of the ledger, and there is not much else over there. Service by publication went into a newspaper in the 3rd month, and the deemed service date fell in the 4th, and in the 5th month her lawyer filed an answer, which was, in a way I had not anticipated at all, the best day of the first year. Her counsel was a man named Nafat Bunmi, from a 2-man office near the municipal market, and the answer he filed was competent and specific, and denied nothing that could not be denied. It said, in substance, the power of attorney was general in effect. The defendant acted within it. The funds were transferred with the plaintiff's knowledge, in discharge of obligations between them. The loan acknowledgement is genuine. The plaintiff has for years conducted his affairs in Thailand through the defendant, and cannot now characterize a decade of ordinary dealings as fraud. And further, the plaintiff's true grievance concerns land which he is not entitled to hold, and about which he should be careful what he says in this court. I read the translation twice, and then I rang Anawat furious, and he said something I have repeated to 4 different men since. He said, she has a lawyer, and he is doing his job, and the fact that he is doing it well is not an insult to you. If she had no lawyer, this case would be worth less to you, not more, because a judgment against an undefended party is a judgment that can be attacked later. Let him file. It is better for you when the other side is properly represented, because when you win, you will have won against something. I did not want that to be true. It is true. The other side's papers also did something I resented enormously at the time, and am grateful for now. They told me what her version was. For 8 months I had known only my own, which had grown teeth. Now there was a second version in the file, signed, and it had a shape. It said I had given her the authority because I trusted her, which was true, and that she had used the money for things I had approved, which was false in part and true in part, and that I had known about the loan document, which was the lie, the single load-bearing lie. Once I could see which one it was, the whole case narrowed to a point. Anawat said, "Good. Now we are not arguing about 8 years. We are arguing about 1 piece of paper and 4 bank movements. That is a case a court can decide." Around this time the ledger looked like this. On the left, the complaint accepted, service completed, the defense filed and narrowed. 3 exhibits admitted without objection. On the right, 290,000 baht paid, 5 months gone, and a conversation with my daughter Fiona, on a video call, in which she asked me, in the careful voice people use, whether I had considered that I might simply have been generous, and was now calling it theft, because I could not bear the first word. I said something unforgivable, and she hung up. That was the 11th of the 6th month, and I did not speak to her again until the 20th of the 15th. In the 6th month I went to the police, which was a separate track Anawat had advised me to open, carefully, because the loan acknowledgement, if forged, was a criminal matter under the sections dealing with forgery and the use of a forged document, and because a criminal file moving alongside a civil file changes the temperature of a settlement conversation. He also warned me not to expect it to move at the same speed. The station was on the main road and had a raised front counter and a queue that was mostly vehicle matters. I sat on a bench for 2 hours with my wallet of documents on my knees, and when I got to the desk, the officer listened for 90 seconds and told me this was a matter for the court because there was a civil case, and that I should come back with my lawyer, and I said that my lawyer had sent me, and he said, in English, "Civil case is civil case," and I lost my temper in a room with a Thai flag in it, which is an experience I do not recommend. I went back 4 days later with Anawat's clerk, and we were taken through to the back office, and that is where I met Police Major Tirapong Wangyai, and I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to make him into a character, and he was not a character. He was a man with a desk and too much on it. He read the file. That is the whole of the remarkable thing. He read the file, all of it, for about 40 minutes, while we sat there, and he asked 3 questions. Whether I had the original of the power of attorney, or a copy. Whether the bank held the original of the loan acknowledgement, or a scan. And when, precisely, I had first seen the loan document, which was the sharpest question anybody asked in the entire 28 months. Because if I could show that the first time I laid eyes on it was in a bank's compliance response, that was the spine of the criminal side. He said he would accept the complaint. He also said, flatly, without apology, that his division had a very large number of files, that this one had no violence in it, that the amount was significant but not enormous, and that I should think in terms of many months. Then he wrote me a receipt with a number on it and told me to keep the number, not him. I have not made him a hero, and he did not behave like one. He did his job with the resources in front of him, and he did not once suggest that anything could be accelerated by any means whatsoever. Twice in the following year, I went in to ask about progress, and twice he came out and told me the truth, which was, "Not yet. The prosecutor has it. I have sent the follow-up." The first hearing date was set for the 9th month and did not happen. I had bought a shirt. I want to record that. At 64 I went to a tailor on Udon Thani Road and had a shirt made, because I had decided I would sit in that room looking like a man who was owed money rather than a man who had lost it. On the morning of the 9th I was in the corridor outside the courtroom at 8:30, and at 9:10, Anawat came out and said the matter had been postponed because the defense had applied for time to obtain a document, and the new date was in 11 weeks. I said, and I remember the exact words, "For a document?" And he said yes, and that we would do the same thing to them at some point, and that it would be equally reasonable when we did. 11 weeks is not an abstraction. 11 weeks is a visa renewal, a rainy season, and 11 weeks of a monthly outgoing running at 41,000 baht against a pension of a little under 60. That first delay cost me, by my own accounting, about 130,000 baht of runway I had allocated to the second year, which meant that the defense obtaining one document moved my personal deadline for the whole enterprise forward by roughly 3 months. I did that arithmetic sitting in the car park with the door open and my new shirt sticking to my back, and I did not tell anybody about it for a long time. There was also the matter of my own status, which people forget. I was in Thailand on a retirement extension renewed every year, with 800,000 baht seasoned in a Thai account for the required months on either side, and that 800,000 was money I could not spend on the case, and the case was steadily eating the money that was not the 800,000. Every year in the middle of all this, I went to immigration with the bank book and the letter and the photographs and sat in the plastic chairs, and did it properly, because the fastest way to lose this fight was to become a man with a visa problem. Anawat mentioned it once, in the 8th month, with no emphasis on it at all. Your extension is part of the case file, in the sense that if you are not here, there is no case. The rescheduled hearing happened, and it lasted 40 minutes, and it was about scheduling. That is what I would tell any man who imagines this. The great majority of the days you attend court are about court. Which witness on which date, whether the expert report will be available, whether the bank's officer can attend in person. The moment you have rehearsed at 3 in the morning for a year occupies perhaps 90 minutes out of 2.5 years, and when it comes, it does not feel the way you rehearsed it. In the 10th month, there was a mediation session, which in that court happens in a side room with a mediator who is not the judge, and Kanyarat was there. That was the first time I had seen her in 19 months. I had built an entire architecture around this moment, and none of it survived contact. She had cut her hair, she looked tired, and she looked frightened, and she looked, more than anything else, like a person who had been told by her own lawyer that this was going to go on for a long time. She did not look at me for the first 20 minutes. When she did, I discovered that the thing I had assumed I would feel, the heat, the great clean rush of it, was not available. What I felt was something much worse and much smaller, which was recognition. I knew the way she held her bag. That was all. I knew the way she held her bag, and it broke something in me that had been useful. Her side offered 400,000 baht, full and final, both matters withdrawn, no admission. Anawat took me out to the corridor and laid it out with no color on it at all. 400,000 today, against a claim of 3.2, with the criminal complaint dropped, which is the piece they actually want. Take it, and you have your money in 6 weeks and your life back. Refuse it, and you are betting perhaps another 18 months and another 500,000 on a signature analysis you have not seen. And then he said, the thing that decided it, which was not advice, what is it that you want this to say? Nobody had asked me that. Not once, in 19 months, had anybody asked me what I wanted the thing to say, and I stood in a corridor in a provincial courthouse and heard myself answer without thinking. I want a piece of paper with a stamp on it that says it was taken and not given. Because my daughter thinks I gave it away. Because everybody I know at home thinks I gave it away. Because when I say the word stolen, I can hear the pause on the other end of the phone. He said, then 400,000 with no admission does not say that. Refuse it. We refused it, and I have never been sure whether that was the best decision I made or simply the most expensive one, and I am going to come back to that at the end, because the answer is not clean. The 11th month was when I applied for the document examination. This is the part I would explain most carefully to anyone in the middle of it, because it is where the case was actually won, and it is entirely unglamorous. The loan acknowledgement existed as an original at the bank's regional office. Getting it released for examination required an order, and the application for the order required an affidavit, and the affidavit required specimen signatures of mine from a period around the date of the document, which meant 2 weeks assembling everything I had signed in 2021. A lease renewal, 3 hospital consent forms, the back of a vehicle transfer, a guarantee for a friend's phone contract, and having each certified. Then the application, then the order, then the transmission, then the queue at the institute, which was not a queue you could see, but a queue nonetheless, and which was, as Anawat had said at the very first meeting, 4 to 7 months. It was 14 weeks before anything was heard, and what was heard was a request for additional specimens, because the hospital forms had been signed with my left hand, my right being cannulated, a detail I had entirely forgotten and which nearly destroyed the application. And then there was silence. From the middle of the 12th month to the end of the 18th, there was nothing. 6 months. I want to try to convey what 6 months of nothing does, because the setbacks are easy to describe and the silence is not, and the silence is 90% of it. For the first 3 weeks you check every day. You check your email at 7 in the morning before you swim, and again at 11, and again at 4. And you develop a relationship with your lawyer's clerk that is entirely one-sided. And you learn to recognize the particular sound of nothing. Then at some point in the 2nd month you stop checking daily and start checking on a schedule, Mondays, because you have decided that this is more dignified. Then in the 4th month something worse happens, which is that you forget for 2 days at a time, and then you remember, and remembering feels like a betrayal, as if the case were a person in a hospital bed you had walked away from. In the 5th month I began, without admitting it to myself, to plan a life in which the case simply never resolved. I priced a flight home. I looked at a 1-bedroom in a town near Fiona, and did not tell her. Derek came every Friday through all of it. A retired quantity surveyor from Nottingham, in Udon since 2011, who played chess badly and drank 1 beer, and who in 2.5 years asked me about the case precisely twice, both times in the 1st month, and after that, never again. He talked about the roadworks. He talked about a dog he was feeding. He beat me more often than he should have because my concentration was gone. I did not understand what he was doing until the very end, when I understood that he was the only 2 hours a week in which I was not a plaintiff, and that he had constructed that deliberately, and had never once mentioned it. In the 15th month I rang my daughter. It took me 4 days to do it, and the call lasted 9 minutes, and neither of us apologized, and we spoke about her son's school, and then she said, right at the end, "Is it still going on?" And I said yes, and she said, "All right," and that was the entire negotiation. We spoke every fortnight after that. She still did not believe me. But she rang. The ledger. At 18 months. On the left, pleadings closed. 5 hearing days consumed. 2 witness statements filed. 1 document with a laboratory somewhere in Bangkok. 1 criminal complaint with a number on it and a prosecutor who had not decided. On the right, 680,000 baht. 18 months. 1 sold motorcycle. A blood pressure reading that had made a doctor at the clinic on Pasri look up from the machine and ask me what had changed in my life. The 2 columns had stopped moving in the same direction some months earlier. The case was, on the merits, better than it had been at the start. My capacity to keep paying for it was worse than it had been at the start, and the gap between those 2 lines was closing, and it was perfectly obvious to me by then that the entire thing had become a race between them. The letter came on a Thursday in the 19th month, and it was not the laboratory. It was the bank. Anawat had applied, 10 months earlier, almost as housekeeping, for an order compelling the bank to produce its full compliance file on the 4 transfers. Not just the statements, which I already had, but the internal record. Who presented what, at which branch, on which day, with which identification. I had barely registered the application at the time. It was 1 line in a hearing that was otherwise about dates. The order had issued in the 14th month, and the bank had, in the way of large institutions, done nothing about it for 5 months, and then done all of it at once, in a package 4 centimeters thick. I was in his office when he opened it. He read for 11 minutes without saying anything, and then he turned 1 sheet around on the desk and pushed it towards me, and it was a record of the presentation of the loan acknowledgement at the branch on Prajak Road, and against the field for the date it had been presented, there was a date, and the date was the 4th of the month, and I had been, on the 4th of that month, in a bed on the 4th floor of a hospital 2 kilometers away, with a drain in my side, and I could prove it to the hour, because the hospital had already given me the admission record 11 months earlier for an entirely different purpose, and it was in the wallet, in the second section, where it had been sitting the whole time. The document had been presented to the bank on a day on which I could not have signed it, and the file said so in the bank's own hand. I have thought a great deal about what happened in that room, and I do not entirely like the answer. What I felt was not triumph. It was a kind of enormous, unclean relief. The relief of a man who has been telling the same story for 19 months to people who were being kind to him about it, and who has finally been handed a piece of paper that says, "The story is the story." And underneath it, arriving about 4 seconds later, was grief. Because up until that Thursday, there had been a version of events, however thin, in which she had been careless rather than deliberate. And that version died on Anawat's desk at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I had not known I was still carrying it until it was gone. He said, and this is the only time I ever saw him allow himself anything. Now we have a case. The laboratory report came 6 weeks after that, and it was equivocal, which is a thing nobody tells you either. It did not say forged. It said that there were significant divergences in the letter formations of 3 characters and in the pen pressure at the terminal stroke, and that the questioned signature could not be attributed to the specimen writer with confidence. Anawat said that was better than it sounded and worse than I wanted, and that it did not matter as much as it would have done 6 weeks earlier, because it no longer had to carry the case alone. It had to do nothing more than fail to contradict the bank file. Which it did. The trial days were in the 21st and 22nd months, 3 sittings, and I sat through all of them in the shirt, which by then was loose on me. The register in that room is flat. Nobody raises their voice. The judge asks a question, counsel answers, the clerk types, and the most devastating sentence of the entire proceedings is delivered at the volume of a man asking for a receipt. I gave evidence through an interpreter, and it took 1 hour and 10 minutes. And I understood perhaps 1/3 of what was happening in real time, and afterwards Anawat told me I had done well, by which he meant that I had answered the questions asked, and had twice been about to make a speech, and had stopped. Kanyarat gave evidence on the second day. Napat took her through it carefully, and she was steady for most of it, and then she was asked, by the court and not by counsel, on what date she had signed the loan acknowledgement, and she gave a date. And it was not the 4th. It was a date 8 days earlier, when I had been at home and ambulatory. And Anawat, on his feet, put the bank's record in front of her, and asked her to read the presentation date aloud. And she read it aloud, and then there was a silence of perhaps 6 seconds, in which nothing whatsoever happened, and the clerk waited with her hands above the keys. That was the moment. It lasted 6 seconds, and it was conducted entirely in a register you would use to order lunch, and I have never in my life felt anything as complicated as I felt in that room, watching a frightened woman on the other side of a courtroom read out a date that finished her, in a case I had spent every penny I had to bring, about a document I had not signed. I would like to tell you it was clean. It was not clean. What I mainly remember is that her hands were shaking and that I looked at the floor. Judgment came on the 14th of the 24th month. It was read aloud in a room with 9 other matters listed that morning, and it took about 4 minutes. The court found that the power of attorney did not authorize the transfers to third-party accounts, that the loan acknowledgement could not be relied upon in light of the presentation record and the plaintiff's hospitalization, and that the defendant was liable to the plaintiff in the sum of 2,410,000 baht with interest from the date of the first transfer, together with a contribution to costs assessed at a fraction of what I had actually paid. It dismissed the balance of the claim, which covered the transfers the court found I had likely consented to at the time, and it said, in one sentence near the end, that Anawat translated for me twice because I did not believe it the first time, that nothing in the judgment should be understood as determining any question concerning the land, which was not before the court. I did not feel very much. That is the honest report. I had rehearsed this morning for 2.5 years, and when it came, I stood up when I was told to stand up and sat down when I was told to sit down, and afterwards I stood next to my truck in the sun for about 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing, and then drove to the pool and swam 20 lengths at 11:30 in the morning, badly, like always. Then came the second job, the one he had told me about on the first day, and it took another 7 months. A judgment is a piece of paper that says, you are owed money. It is not money. To turn it into money, you go to the execution office and tell them where the assets are, and if you cannot tell them where the assets are, then you have a very expensive certificate. The house and the land were untouchable, both because they were legally hers, and because they were, as I discovered in the 26th month, mortgaged to a bank in Nong Han for 1.1 million baht, which had happened 4 months after she stopped answering my calls, and which explained a great deal. The pickup had been sold. There was an account with 31,000 baht in it. There was, however, a second plot, small agricultural, near the highway, which the land office record showed had been transferred to her in October 2021, 3 weeks after the last of the 4 transfers. And Anawat had known about it since the 8th month, because he had sent a paralegal to pull the extract on the day the case was filed, and had said nothing to me for 2 years because there was no point in me carrying it around. That plot was seized and sold at auction in the 30th month for 1,460,000 baht. From that came the execution office's fees, and the outstanding court costs, and the balance of Anawat's schedule, and what arrived in my account on a Wednesday in the 31st month was 1,382,000 baht. So, the audit, which is the only part of this I would ask you to actually remember. I claimed 3.2 million. I was awarded 2.41. I collected 1.38, of which the enforceable remainder, some 800,000 baht of the judgment plus accruing interest, sits against a woman with a mortgaged house and no assets, and will in all probability never be collected. And Anawat told me on the day the money landed that I could renew the judgment, and I asked what that would cost, and he told me, and I said no. Against the 1.38, I had paid 940,000 baht in fees and disbursements over 2 years and 7 months, of which the costs order returned me a little under 140. Net, in cash, across 31 months, I am somewhere around 580,000 baht better off than the man who walked up those concrete stairs, which is roughly 13,000 pounds, which is less than 18% of what was taken. And that arithmetic ignores the 31 months, which I do not, because I am 66. And 31 months at 66 is not the same commodity as 31 months at 40. And what about the 400,000 they offered me in the 10th month, with the whole of the second year and a half still in front of me? I have done that sum too, at 3 in the morning. 400,000 banked in month 11, against 580,000 banked in month 31, with 20 months of my life and my blood pressure and my daughter's silence in the middle. On money alone, it is close enough that a reasonable man could argue it either way. And if you are reading this in the middle of your own, and somebody offers you a number early, do not let anybody, including me, tell you that taking it is weakness. It is arithmetic. But it was never only money, and this is where I have to answer the question I gave in a corridor. I wanted a piece of paper with a stamp on it that said it was taken and not given. I got one. It is 4 pages of Thai with a certified English translation stapled behind it, and in month 25 I sent a scan of it to my daughter with no message attached, because I could not think of a message that was not undignified. She rang me 11 hours later, which given the time difference means she rang me at something like 2 in the morning her time, and the first thing she said, before hello, was, "Dad, I'm so sorry." And then neither of us said anything for a while. And that, if you want the true accounting, is what 1,800,000 baht of gross expenditure and 31 months of my life actually bought. And I am not able to tell you whether it was worth it, but I am able to tell you that I have never once wished I had bought something else with it. Here is what I did not get, and I want to list it, because the version of this story where the man wins is a lie of omission. I did not get an apology. Nobody in that building ever said the words, "You were wronged," to me. The judgment said the defendant was liable, which is a different sentence, and if you are hoping for the first one, you will not get it from a court. I did not get her punished. The criminal file sat with the prosecutor for 22 months, and the decision was made not to proceed, on the basis that the matter had been determined in the civil court, and the sum recovered, and Major Tirapong rang me himself to tell me that, which he did not have to do. I did not get the house, and I will never get the house, and Anawat was right about the house on the first day, and the 4 months I spent before I met him constructing a speech to deliver outside it were 4 months spent building a plan to burn down my own life over a building I had never legally owned. And I did not get the thing I actually went in for in the 4th month, at 3 in the morning, which was to make her known. Nobody outside, about 9 people, knows her name in connection with this. There is no post. There is no thread. If I had written the post, and I nearly did, twice, and the second time it was drafted and my thumb was on it, I would have had a criminal defamation complaint against me inside a fortnight, and I would have spent the money that bought the bank order on defending myself instead, and the presentation date on that document would have sat in a bank's filing system in Prajak Road unexamined for the rest of my life, and she would have kept the small plot near the highway, and my daughter would still think I gave it away. That is what he meant, on the first day, when he told me I would not enjoy the last 30 minutes. I came up those stairs wanting something loud and fast and free. He sold me something quiet, slow, and expensive, and it was so much worse than what I wanted that it took me 8 months to stop resenting him for it, and about 2 years to understand that worse, and the only thing that would have worked, were, in this instance, the same word. I still swim. Derek still beats me at chess on Fridays, and now sometimes asks about the case, which is how I know it is over. The shirt is at the back of the wardrobe, and is now 2 sizes too large, and I have not thrown it away. And in the drawer of the desk in the front room, in a brown envelope, there is the numbered slip from the filing queue with 0043 on it, and behind that the receipt from the execution office in Udon Thani, stamped and dated on a Wednesday in the 31st month, for 1,382,000 baht, which I have never framed and never photographed, and take out perhaps twice a year, on no particular schedule, for no reason I have ever been able to explain to anybody.